Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 382, recorded live on Sunday, May 17th. I am your host, Patrick. With me this week we have Propane. Welcome back,
Hello,
sir.
everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you back. This week's screenshot, Bar Nunn's audience with the Queen has a surprising effect in the 222nd screenshot of the week, which unfortunately, trying something a little different here, how I'm going to do the Twitch feed here, but that means Propane can actually see the picture. Which is, if you know the spot, it's in, I'm pretty sure that's in, I forgot the name, it's Spies in the House at the shrine. And there's a fully laden, multiple barrel, purple crystal kobold, which is kind of an oddity to find in any quest. I'm not exactly sure how that's supposed to work, but there you go. That's kind of fun and exciting. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums from our website, DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next Saturday. And you can stay updated by following us on social media pages and our website, DDOCast.com, with our calendar. What's on the podcast this week? Well, we're going to talk about improving your defense. Is going to be kind of our main theme for the discussion. And then we're also going to talk about warlocks. Some very early but very informative news about warlocks dropped this week. So we'll kind of go through a lot of that. Be probably kind of fast, so we're not here all day. But we'll try and get through as much of that as we can and give some initial feedback on that. So to start, we're going to talk about improving your defense. That's kind of the main theme for today. What we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of several of the different defense mechanisms we have in the game, and we're going to kind of briefly go over them, what they do, why they're useful or not useful, as the case may be, and we're not going to go over every way to get it, but we're going to kind of go over some, shall we say, clever ways to get them that you may not be used to using. So the first one is armor class, which is shortened as AC. You can see that everywhere. What that stands for is armor class. That's basically a reflection of how good your armor is and how hard you are to actually hit. Now, if you're a pen and paper buff, you kind of know the difference. There's like touch AC and flat-footed AC and AC. They're all kind of reflective of different aspects of it. But your AC is generally reflective of how easy are you to hit? Can people hit you without being, or can monsters hit you with relative ease? The AC's kind of come a long way since the show, or since DDO kind of came out. It used to be following the pen and paper rules, which was you had a variation of 20 in your attack bonus, and you compared them to, so it used to be you could reach this point where you would only be hit 5% of the time. Those days are long behind us.
Yes.
Have been.
Back in the good TOD days that you were either not touched or creamed, typically, it seemed like.
Yeah, the fallacy was that it was all based on the D20 roll, which it still kind of is. But it was, the way that it worked was that you would just get, there was a variation of 20 numbers that anyone could roll on whether or not they could hit. So it was a very small window. When we're talking about having variation of an AC of players of 100 or so, it meant that 95% of player characters were just going to get creamed. They would always get hit. And the other people would only get hit 5% of the time, which led for some balancing issues. So they changed how AC works. And it now, it plateaus, basically, is the easy way of saying it. So at a certain point, getting more AC, every extra point of AC you get will be slightly less effective than the previous point of AC that you got. So what's kind of your target number for hitting AC on most of your characters?
I like to shoot, if I can get 100 for my non-tanks, I'm pretty happy. Typically, it's probably around the 80s unless I'm really working on it. But I feel somewhere around 100, you'll start to notice that you're getting hit less. And that's kind of the first set point for me. If I get to 100, I'm fairly happy. For tanks, when you're turtled up, sword and board or whatever mode you're in. If you get 160, 175, that's kind of where I like to try to get the tanks without giving up too much other things.
Yeah, that's kind of the trick of all this defense stuff, right? Is the balancing between defense and offense. More offense usually comes at the cost of defense. So we had a couple weeks back, we had a show on improving your offense. This one's kind of on the other side. I think 100 is a good benchmark. I think most of my characters probably are clocking in somewhere in the 80 to 100-ish range. I don't tend to worry too much about AC. And the reason why is, let's say that I don't like having more AC, but the reason why I kind of look at AC is just determining whether or not you're going to get hit. And the fact of the matter is, the way the game is designed now is you're just going to get hit. Like, that's the way it's going to work. Like, AC is only going to get you so far, and then you're going to get hit.
If you get hit 12 times or 9 times, you're still getting hit fairly often.
Yeah, and as much damage, particularly when you start talking about Epic Elite, holy cow, I got hit by I don't even know what it was. I was running Storm the Beaches. It wasn't the ballistas, but just some random mob hit me, and I got hit twice for 230 damage each hit. And I was dead. Like, wow, that was a lot all of a sudden. So, I mean, we're talking about trying not to die, right? That's the goal with defense, is staying alive. So we like, being alive is good. It's a lot more enjoyable for the game, for sure.
Yes.
That's kind of the goal. Stay alive, win. That's, but if I'm only going to get hit twice, out of 30 times, if those 2 hits are doing 250 points of damage, that's still going to hurt a lot. The more times you get hit, the more damage you can take. So, I would say, shoot for, and when it comes to AC, my general rule of thumb is get as much as you can without giving anything up. That's kind of where I fall on this.
That seems to be the 60s to 80s. Unless you start working at it a little bit, a lot of my characters end up 60 to 80, just whatever gear and other enhancements they end up with.
Yeah, and they made a lot of adjustments to armor and ACs and bonuses and stuff like that. So you can get a pretty decent AC without having too much trouble. And it will be effective. You will be missed occasionally. But again, my approach to AC is as much as I can get without giving up anything. I'm not going to worry about anything in that regards. Now, as we go through some of these other things, you'll find that I'm actually getting more AC, but the reason why, for things like wearing armor on a caster, which means I have to account for arcane spell failure, so you can kind of make an argument that I'm giving up something there for AC, but I'm not doing it for AC per se, although that will be one of the benefits I get out of it. So let's talk about physical resistance rating, which is abbreviated PRR. And this is indicated, I should say, on AC, you have on your stat sheet, there's a spot where it says AC. PRR is reflective of how absorbent you are for taking damage. The easiest way to get this is to wear armor. If you wear any kind of armor, you will get a certain amount of PRR. I'm not going to read out the formula, mostly because I don't have it. But you get more for heavier armor than for lighter armor. And PRR will reduce all physical incoming damage by a certain percentage. So what they do is you get a PRR number, and if you look on your character sheet, I think it's a shield, right? It's next to a shield icon.
Yeah, it's in the bottom right-hand corner. It have a certain number of what your rating is, and then if you mouse over it for 2 or 3 seconds, a certain percentage will pop up, and it'll tell you what percentage of your physical attacks gets reduced out.
Yeah, so the game will actually calculate it for you. You can actually I actually have on an Excel spreadsheet that I use for gaming and keeping track of some other things. I actually have a spot where I can input 2 PRR values, and it will show me how much the percentage is being reduced, so I can kind of compare 2 numbers and how much it is. But if memory serves, 1 point of PRR is more or less 0.065%. Now, again, this is something that plateaus. So as you get more PRR, every point of PRR is slightly less effective than the previous point. But obviously a lot of PRR is going to be a lot better. I think I've seen one of my guys get up to somewhere around like 60 to 70% reduction percent as a more or less standing PRR value and reduction in damage. So that's a lot of damage that you can reduce. Now, having said that, even just getting a little bit is going to be quite a bit effective. 10 to 20.
That first 50 to 100 even makes a huge difference.
Even more than that, like 10 to 20 PRR will reduce it by about 12% or something like that, somewhere around there, I think. Again, we're not going to focus too much on numbers, but more on philosophy here. But just even that little bit of PRR will go a long ways. I mean, 10 PRR is not that hard to get. 20 PRR is really not even that
you'll
hard to
get some PRR from carrying or equipping a shield as well. So even if that isn't your normal mode, having a shield in your inventory, you always can equip it while you're running across the room or doing some short-term activities, and you'll gain the damage reduction from just having that shield. And occasionally there's a time where you get the old crap moment where you throw the shield up and just turtle up for a little bit. So different ways to help you stay alive a little longer.
Yeah, and there's augments that you can get PRR. There's a couple of items around that have PRR, and just a little bit of investment will go a long ways. And on that note, casters you'll see a lot of casters these days running around with even heavy armor, even though they have to account for all the arcane spell failure. With the enhancements, that's actually surprisingly easy to do these days. Get a heavy armor with a blue augment in it. You can drop the spell failure reduction augment in that. Grab some enhancements, boom, you've got a great, you're wearing heavy armor, you're getting somewhere around, 30 to 40 PRR right off the bat, which is really effective, and really, it's those first several points, up to 50 points, it's not hard to do, it's not terribly hard to do for most characters, and it really,
that's very noticeable.
Yeah.
And I'll just mention, I'm not sure if it's still in the game, but I believe there's a display bug that sometimes if you change a gear and you look at your character sheet trying to see what effect gear A or B has, sometimes you got to go to a different character sheet and come back because it doesn't always update instantaneously. So if you change something out and you expected a difference and don't see it, just toggle your character sheet back and forth and then look again.
I wasn't actually aware of that. But on the note of PRR, we're just going to cover some easy ways, but some less obvious ways that you can get some PRR. Casters, for example, typically they're talking about wizards and sorcerers. They're usually going to struggle to get more PRR than most because they're not proficient with any armor. You don't actually have to be proficient with armor to get PRR out of it. Personally, I think you probably should get less PRR if you're not proficient with the armor. But you don't necessarily have to be proficient to get PRR out of it. So you'll see a lot of casters wearing armor, even though they're not technically proficient with it. You can also, they have an ability in their Eldritch Knight's tree, the Eldritch Knight Shield, which adds PRR to the shield spell, basically. So if you have a shield spell active, you'll get some PRR that way. Humans also have an enhancement in their, and this is really low-hanging fruit for them. It's in their first tier of enhancements. They can get extra PRR dependent on their health, which isn't always the best thing. Health-dependent bonuses are kind of lousy since you don't really want to be that close to death. But on the flip side, it also extends, I believe it extends your in-cap range, which is great. That helps you stay alive. And it gives you some PRR for when you're when you're about to die. You get a little extra defense. So the closer you get to death, the harder you are to kill. That's probably about the best use of that mechanic of relating something to your health.
And if you're wearing one of the armor types, the PRR is based a little bit on your base attack bonus. So if you have Tensor's Transformation or some of the other ways to raise your base attack bonus, you'll squeak out a couple more points of that as well.
It's also a good way to do it. You also see a lot of particularly tanky-ish builds. You see a lot of bards running around with like 3 fighter levels. My druid will sooner or later eventually have 3 fighter levels and 17 druid because he's more of a melee. The reason why people are doing that too is, again, some low-hanging fruit. With 3 levels of fighter or paladin, you can get the defensive stance from those classes, and on that first tier, you can get PRR just from being in that stance, in addition to what it already provides. So you can get, I think that's like 30 to 40 just from that.
It's a chunk. Yeah, I don't remember. It's a chunk though. It adds up.
Yeah, it's so that that's another way if you're gonna be taking some fighter levels anyways. 3 fighter levels or paladin levels is actually surprisingly effective in that regards. So let's talk about dodge. Dodge is a percentage of that you're just gonna get missed. We're not talking about AC now. This is dodge is whatever your dodge percent is. If that percent chance hits, you just get missed, flat out missed from a physical attack.
They don't even roll to hit your AC at that point.
Right, exactly. And it is important to note that dodge is generally capped at either 25% or your armor check penalty. Not your armor check penalty, your maximum dexterity bonus, which can be affected by both your armor and your shield independently of each other. So whichever one is lower, there's ways to increase your maximum dexterity bonus so you can get more dodge. But it's useful to know that you may not be able to get a whole lot depending on what you're wearing. So if you're wearing full plate and a tower shield, and you don't have a lot of extra max dex bonus boosts, you're not going to have a lot of dodge. Monks, on the other hand, don't wear armor. They have very high dodge. They, in fact, get bonuses to dodge based on their class. So that can be really helpful.
I got a couple splash builds that I'm looking at the medium armor because there's enough dodge available between that 10 and 15% dodge. Not sure if going to the heavy armor is really worth giving up that much dodge. So when you get to that middle range of the dodge, it's really takes a little studying to figure out what's the best way to go.
Which we'll talk about in a moment. But just some quick ways that you can get some extra dodge that you might not be thinking about. Barbarians and rogues get an ability called Uncanny and Improved Uncanny Dodge. What that is the great thing was it's not limited by number of uses per rest. You can use it as many times as you want, provided that it's not on timer. And the timer is actually reasonably short for this, but it gives you a big pile of. I think it's like 50% for improved. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I see a lot of particularly barbarians and even rogues, underutilize that ability. You get a lot of mobs around you. You can click that and get a pretty good boost. Druids have an ability that lets them use their wild shape, or not their wild shape, their wild empathy for dodge bonus. It's also important to note Uncanny Dodge is not capped by your max dex bonus for that 25% bonus. It will go over that. The other thing is bards have a song Inspire Heroics. It's normally a single target song, and it does improve your dodge. However, if you have the rapier from the Sentinel chain, it will affect everybody for one song. So that's a pretty neat trick as well. Do you have any other places you'd like to find dodge from?
If you have the feats to spend, your dodge feat, mobility, spring attack, if you got a lot of feats, you gain, I think, 7 or so. You add all those feats together. And depending on the armor I'm wearing, I'll often use the Cane of Crafting and do mobility somewhere. You get 2 dodge with that, and you can put that in a trinket, or there's several places that mobility will go, assuming you're not in metal armor.
There's a couple of items that actually have mobility on them, and the nice thing about that is it actually gives you +2 maximum dexterity bonus to your armor, as well as the 2 dodge. So it kind of gets under that, even if you're already capped on your dodge bonus anyways. So now we're going to discuss PRR versus dodge. So Nixon on Orion asked, which is best, dodge or PRR? Oh, were it that simple to pick one?
Yes. It depends. How's that go?
Yeah. Why don't you give us your philosophy on this?
Oh, I like just some rough numbers. I try to get a decent value in both. If my AC is up in that 80 to 100 range, then I'll see where my PRR range, if that's in the 80 to 100, and then I'll look where my dodge is. I personally think it's good to have a little bit in all three areas before you really start trying to pile it on any one specific area, because the first I call it 20 or 30% you get in any of these areas gives you a lot of benefit. I'd much rather have 10 dodge versus 0 dodge and an extra 10 AC most of the time, or even 15 AC. So it really depends on where you're at with the other numbers.
I think the big difference here is PRR is mitigation, dodge is avoidance. And what we mean by that is PRR assumes you're going to get hit. And when you do get hit, it reduces the damage that you take. Dodge is avoiding getting hit at all in the first place. So it kind of is going to depend on your build. Monks are obviously going to get a lot more at dodge because they can get higher dodge, and PRR is going to be harder for them because they can't get as much armor. Rogues can kind of play a little bit more of a game, but they're going to be a little bit more limited in dodge and be able to get some more PRR. My personal philosophy is both are great. I almost always go for PRR over dodge. And the reason for that is I feel like I get more bang for my buck out of PRR. I'm going to get hit. Dodge is, as a static number, dodge is probably at most going to be somewhere between 10 and 20% is kind of where I'm going to be at. So it's a difference of about 10% damage if you want to really stupefy the numbers. It's not an exact way of doing it, but if you figure you're mitigating at most 10% of damage based on what you could or don't have out of dodge, versus PRR, if you spend a little bit more investment, PRR is generally easier to get anyways than dodge. You're probably going to be able to get somewhere more around 20 to 40% damage mitigation through PRR. So I personally tend to go more for PRR. Now, the way I kind of do it is I get as much PRR as I can, and then I get as much dodge as I can get that is beneficial to me afterwards. That's my approach.
Another nice thing I do like about the PRR is the incoming damage seems to be more consistent, where in the high dodge characters I have, you get the spikes of damage. You won't get hit, and bam, you'll get hit for 300 or 400 versus the nickel and diming of 100 or 80 a shot.
Which is definitely the way that, and that's what is intended to from the design, right? Like they actually, and we'll talk about this with MRR versus Invasion in a little bit. That's kind of the big factor, right? PRR and MRR are more towards, you're gonna take more damage overall, but you're gonna smooth it out. It's gonna be over more time. Dodge and Evasion, you're going to take probably gonna take less damage overall if your values are really good, but when you do take damage, it's going to be spiky.
It's going to hurt.
Yeah, and depending on how many hit points you have, that might also be a factor, right? If you don't have a lot of hit points and you're going with the avoidance method, primarily over mitigation, when you don't avoid, it's going to hurt. So, my personal preference: get as much PRR as I can within the limitations of my class. If I have evasion, I'm not really going to go over light armor anyways, because evasion is helpful, and you can definitely get a nice middle ground if your saves are decent. But I go for PRR based on what I can get for my class without totally negating my abilities, specifically evasion, but there's also other stuff to be aware of. And then I fill in as much dodge as I can behind that, kind of backfill it in. I want to talk about MRR, which is magical resistance rating. So physical resistance rating will mitigate damage that is physical. So a monster hits you with a sword, or its teeth, or claws, or whatever. MRR is going to reflect damage from spell and spell-like attacks. And I believe correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's limited to kind of stuff that you would normally get reflex saves for.
Yeah, I think it's. I believe you're correct there. I believe you need a reflex save for it to be effective.
Right. So it's not going to mitigate, for example, magic missile. It's not going to apply to that. But otherwise, it's very similar to PRR, except it's working on different things. There's a couple of things to note about it, though. One is it's harder to get, for starters. PRR is much more prevalent. MRR, not so much. You can still get really high numbers, but it's something to be aware of. It's also you get if you're using a heavy or a tower shield, your MRR value gets doubled against those attacks. So the reason for that is to kind of let it compete with evasion and improved evasion a little better. So you can't use evasion with a heavy shield or a tower shield. So it's if you're using evasion, you can use light or bucklers and get some MRR value from it. But if using evasion, they don't want you to get a lot more out of having a heavy armor or heavy shield. But they want the people using heavy shields that don't have evasion to be more survivable in general. So
those heavy shields sometimes kill your reflex save too. So it's an attempt to keep stuff balanced.
Yeah. So there's reasons for that, and it's actually I think working pretty well as a system. You don't see evasion is no longer the king of the hill as it used to be. It used to be that pretty much any build that was worth its weight in plat would have evasion in it. That's no longer the case, and that's very good for the game. So some ways to get some MRR. Defensive stances are a way. You can get them out of the augments, but they are in general going to be a lot harder to find. However, one place that is harder to do, but the cloaks and bracers that you can get from the Mysterious Remnants have an MRR bonus on them. So that's one way. You can get that at level 7, 14, and 21, depending on how many remnants you have. So that's an option as well. Or do you have any other really clever ways to get MRR?
Not offhand. I mean, the stances is typically where I get it from. Otherwise, whatever happens. As I go for PRR, you seem to get some of it.
Yeah, you get a little bit as you go on. I think if your armor is magical, you get some as well. But I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head. I don't remember if that's true or not. But it's certainly helpful. And you're probably already going for PRR, so you'll get a little MRR as well. But keep an eye out for it. It can definitely be helpful, particularly when you start fighting, say, fire dragons, as an example. So there's some ways to get around that. Kind of the flip side of that, again, MRR is mitigation. The avoidance version of it is evasion and improved evasion. And how those work is with evasion and improved evasion, if you make a reflex save, you don't take any damage at all. Normally you would take half. If you have improved evasion, if you fail your reflex save, you take half damage instead of full damage. So if you can get improved evasion, that's really good. It's still a really good thing to have. Now, again, MRR versus evasion. Kind of the same thing as we were talking about between PRR and dodge. One's mitigation, one's avoidance. Evasion, you'll probably take less damage overall. Well, improved evasion, you'll probably take less damage overall. But when you take damage, it's going to hurt a lot more. MRR, you're going to take more damage overall, but it's going to be smoothed out over a longer period of time. So, again, it depends on my class, right? If I get evasion, I'm not going to ignore having evasion or improved evasion. Those are really nice abilities. And usually those classes can't use heavier armors for a number of reasons anyways, so...
Yeah, with this, you really got to try to pay attention to your saves. If you have your evasion and your saves are in the 30s, that evasion when you're starting to run level 25 and up, Epic Elite, it's not going to help you near as much as it would be if you had a much better reflex save. So if you want to run those higher, more challenging content, you really got to pay attention to that reflex save and try to get it up to maybe 50. It's a nice part, maybe more than that, but at around 50, that's kind of a personal bogey I have. If I can't get the mid 40s, 50, I really start and wonder if I'd be better off wearing something heavier.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a really good way of thinking about whether you want to go for MRR or more for evasion is what are your saves going to be? If your build's not going to have very good saves and reflex anyways, going for just splashing 2 levels just to get evasion, it's probably not going to be that beneficial for you. Some examples of how this has played out for me personally, gaming. I re-rolled my fighter, so he went from pure fighter to 12 fighter, 6 ranger, 2 monk. Gives feats, gives evasion. He's limited to wearing light armor to keep evasion and to use some of the ranger abilities. But he's able to kind of compensate for that with the fighter stance. So he can, he's got evasion, he's got decent-ish saves. They're probably generally in the mid-40s to low 50s, depending on the situation. And that kind of stuff all kind of helps work together. And he's got a nice balance of dodge, PRR, evasion, MRR, and everything. On the flip side, my druid, in my defense, he was built before there was such a thing as MRR. But he took 3 levels of monk. He took 2 levels of monk for evasion, for the monk feats, and to kind of boost his survivability because there wasn't MRR in the game. Now that there is MRR in the game, he really needs MRR. His saves are not good enough for evasion to really play into it enough. And it was particularly noticeable in Abbott and Fire Peaks, where the evasion just really isn't cutting it. His saves aren't good enough. He really needs to be MRR instead. So I don't know if you have any good examples.
I got a 17 cleric, 3 monk. That's a Stunning Fist Wisdom build. And typically I have Radiant Servant going and a little healing amp that's typically enough to keep me out of trouble. But as I start running some of, say, Epic Giant Hold, they hit so hard that the Radiant Servant doesn't heal through that, and I get myself in trouble if I stay in with the mobs too close. So the playing style in the easier content is between the healing amp and Radiant Servant. You're pretty hard to kill, but in the more challenging content, I buzz in, I stun, and bounce out because I know that if I stay in there, I'm going to get hit. My AC is low. My PRR is non-existent. I'll get hit 2-3 times. It doesn't matter if I'm healing 60 or 80 a tick on my Radiant Servant, that you get hit for a couple hundred a crack and you're done.
Yep. So those are AC, PRR, dodge, MRR, and evasion are kind of your 3. Well, I'm going to say 3 because there are 2 of them each are kind of addressing the same issue, but from different methods. Those are kind of your main defenses. Now we're going to talk about some stuff that's a little less. People tend to think about it a little less when they're thinking about their defenses than these ones, because the next couple of stuff, they will help you stay alive. So we're going to put them in with defense. They are defensive mechanisms, but they're not typically what we normally think about when we're talking about defense. The first one we're going to talk about is hit points. As your hit points approach 0, your chances of dying increase exponentially.
Yes.
More hit points are good. There's a lot of ways to get extra hit points. Increasing your constitution. There's false life and vitality enhancements that you can get extra hit points from. If you're already in if you take those 3 levels of fighter or paladin for defense, for the defensive stance, and you're going to either have a shield or medium or heavy armor, you can take, there's a 3rd tier ability that will, provided that you're in stance and you have either medium, heavy, or shield, you can get up to 20% bonus to your hit points, which is a pretty big boost. There's a similar boost in the Sentinel tree. I think was it 10, 20? Might be 30%. It might be 10% per tier, but you can get a lot of hit points through that.
The upper tiers also offer a constitution bonus of 2, 4, or 6, and typically I think you're better off taking the extra percentage hit points off the top, and then if you got the levels or the skill points or AP to spend, go after the con. But that first lower tree there, of those extra 20% hit points, that's big.
Yeah, you will need 4 levels of fighter or paladin to get both the con and the hit points. Plus 6 constitution is at best going to, really it's going to get you 3 hit points per level. So you can definitely get more out of the percentage, particularly as you start, because that's going to multiply other stuff in there as well. Other ways you can get extra hit points. Temporary hit points is a good trick. Paladins have a level 1 spell that gives them hit points. I can never seem to use all of my false life wands that I find. So that's another neat trick. Another one that I want to kind of point out, I don't think it gets used very much because it's kind of a sacrificial thing. But artificers have a spell that they can cast that reduces their hit points by 10 and increases the person it's cast on by 10%. Again, I don't see it very often, but if you're in a really tanky situation in a raid, it can be a really good use for a spell.
I remember running a Shroud where an Artie gave basically the entire party 10%, and his hit point just kept going down, 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 down. He survived even round 4, but it was funny.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's it's a trick that you can use. It's not necessarily always advisable. Aid potions also do the same. Aid gives you temporary hit points as well. There's a Bard Song that gives you temporary hit points and stuff like that. So there's some options there. Dwarves have an enhancement that gives you a percentage boost to hit points as well.
If you have any of the old guild augment items floating around, you can get 5, 10, 15, or 20 hit points depending on the size of the augment. And at lower levels, that is really helpful. Level 1 to 8, 15, 20 hit points. That makes a big difference in the lower levels.
I don't think those stack with the newer airship amenities, though. So that's something to be aware of.
Oh, I'm going to have to go check now. I don't know that.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't because I was playing around with that with the characters I've been rolling for Makar's challenge, which we'll talk about later. Winter Stim also mentioned in the chat that Draconic Vitality is 10 hit points as well, which is a good one. That's from Agents of Arganesson favor. That's the second tier. So you need to get
the giant old favor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is not anywhere near as hard to get as it used to be.
And there's the toughness feat, which isn't used quite as common, but if you got the feats and the ability points to spend toughness and epic toughness, that adds up pretty quick too.
Yeah, you don't see people spend as many action points into the toughness lines anymore because they're not as bang for their buck as they used to be. But there's ways to do that.
The Harper tree, there's a low-hanging fruit. I think you can pick up 15 hit points pretty easy without spending too many action points.
Yep. We'll see. So next we're going to talk about Healing Amp, which admittedly is a bit of a stretch if we're talking about defenses, but it directly impacts how many hit points you get back from healing. So we're going to talk about it because, hit points are important. So Healing Amp, I've seen a lot of people have kind of differing opinions on this, and we're going to lump some Repair Amp and Negative Amp in this too if you're a Pale Master or Warforged. But Healing Amp is still pretty important. And the reason for that is a lot of people will have kind of taken the stance that, well, a heal spell is just going to heal me up to full anyway. It doesn't matter what my Healing Amp is. Well, that's true. But I think these days it's much, much more common that you're not going to get a full heal spell. You're probably not even going to have a full cleric in your group anymore. You're going to get a lot more of cocoons or renewal from the Angel Tree, Exalted Angel Tree, or perhaps the aura from the Divine Crusader. So you're probably more likely to get a lot of smaller, cheaper healing than you might normally get if you're in a serious raid tank healing situation. So it's something to definitely keep in mind. Also, obviously, it makes your potions a little bit more effective. But you can get pretty decent Healing Amp without too much trouble. There's some items you can get. There's enhancements in several different places. Typically, humans and monks have some extra Healing Amp. There's actually, if you're a monk, the Shinto tree, your first action point, gives you plus 10 positive spell power and plus 10 Healing Amp. Which is really good for one action point.
Yeah, for one action point, yep.
And you can spend it right away, too, so it's pretty dang good. So there's some stuff like that around. There's also, I think that the Mysterious Remnant items have a stacking bonus to Healing Amp there as well. There's a whole bunch of places.
In regards to gear, You can get the Purple Dragon Knight gloves at level 20 with the combination turned into an Evening Star. So that's a nice level 20, fairly easy to get gear that's got some good healing amp. And then in the Three Barrel Cove, you can get the gloves there. They're a nice replacement at level 24, I believe it is.
Yes, indeed. And my Warforge and my Dwarven Paladin tank, my Warforge for Baron, both those characters are still wearing TOD rings that have healing amp on them.
I was just going to mention that. Yeah, I've actually went and made a couple for certain instances that 20% healing amp you get from TOD ring. They're 40% now. That's right. It's doubled. That adds up.
Yep. Well, it's additive now instead of multiplicative, so they doubled it all. I'd say with healing amp too, you really want to look at what race are you to and what class are you. Barbarians now, I think, with all their kind of like little healing stuff that they can get, it can be really beneficial. But barbarians are kind of notorious for having lousy healing amp, particularly Warforged and Half-Orcs. It's less of a problem as it used to be, but those are always people would have just lousy healing amp for those kind of characters. And keep in mind, if anything, you're probably less likely now, more than ever, to be actually healed by a real healer with a real heal spell. So the healing amp will go a long way for you.
One thing to mention, you mentioned Cocoon. If you have the spot somewhere to sneak a devotion item on, you can help your own Cocoon with yourself or someone else. See if you can slot it somewhere or hot swap a ring or helm or something. But don't forget about the devotion item for your own casting.
Yep. All right, so let's leave the hit point stuff behind. We're going to talk about damage reduction. I'm going to skip to this one because, generally speaking, it's not really good enough to be that effective. Damage reduction just rolls off damage off the top of what you take. So you'll get a number value, and then there'll be some sort of mechanism for bypassing it. Maybe you can get damage reduction that they can't bypass with an attack. This is physical damage again. We're talking about getting hit with a weapon for the most part, or claws or teeth or something to that effect. You're probably not going to get a whole lot of it. There's some ways to get some temporary stuff. There's some spells, Stone Skin being the big one. War Chainers also have a song that can give them damage reduction. Is it Inspire Reckless?
I don't. I think it's one of the other ones.
Okay, so there's a War Chainer song that gives you damage reduction. You can get some of that. Generally speaking, my advice is not to really worry about damage reduction unless you're at really low levels where the damage is going to be a lot less. You can craft an invulnerability, which is it gives you 5 damage reduction magic. So unless the weapon they're using is magical, you'll take 5 damage off the top. When they're doing 25 damage to you, that's a lot. When they're doing 300 damage to you, that's not a lot. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, there's the full plate of the giants you can get from Tempest Spine. That's, I think, level 8 or 10 armor, and that's good to wear till early teens. I think that's got 5 too, or if there's any adamantine armors floating around. But yeah, that's once you get to mid-teens, that 3 to 5 points of damage, it's hardly noticeable.
Yeah, the one place where damage reduction is really noticeable and good at higher levels is the Shadow Dragon armor. It has to be heavy armor to put it on there, but you can get DR 30 epic, and then it goes up to DR 60 epic if you're below like 75% health. So that's a pretty significant amount even at upper levels. Otherwise, DR, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. I don't spend action points in it. I don't spend feats on it. I kind of ignore even the items that have it unless I'm really low a level and don't have something better.
Some nice trinket gear to get you to level 8 or 10, but then you can leave it in your bank.
Yeah. So let's see what we're going to talk about next. We'll talk about concealment. So concealment is a flat-out mischance. It's reflective of whether or not they can really see you clearly is kind of the idea. There's a couple different ways you can do that. There's blur and displacement. They don't stack, but they do overlap. So the higher number applies, but displacement has a much shorter duration than Blur does. So that's an option. There's also what people tend to not realize is those cloud spells that you can cast. They actually provide concealment, and what's more, they tend to apply it to raid bosses. Oddly enough, which normally have things like true seeing and bypass blur and displacement, but aren't actually able to bypass them. Now, my recommendation, if you can use this tactic, use Cloud Kill. It's the least offensive to your party members to use. Solid Fog fills the whole area. It makes it hard for anyone to see what's going on. Cloud Kill, not so much.
Though Solid Fog stuff slows down now. I don't know how many years that's been broke, but Solid Fog actually starts to slow stuff down again.
Well, it's supposed to.
It's supposed to, yeah. But
So
I think that
slow
bug
stuff
was
down.
there for 2 years, it seemed like.
But clouds will get you a little extra concealment if you don't normally carry that kind of stuff. And against things that would normally bypass where you're going to get your concealment out of in general anyways. There are some items that also have it as well, have those bonuses as well. The important thing to note, concealment is all kind of on the same channel, so you're not going to get stacking effects out of this. They might overlap so that the highest one applies, and when it expires, you'll get the lower one. But you're not going to get blur and displacement to give you a total of a 50% chance to miss and then a 20% chance to miss. Dodge will still apply, though. That's a different channel.
So thinking for items, so when the Crystal Cove comes back around, there's a necklace, or excuse me, a trinket you can get in there that gives you a little bit of dodge and your 20% concealment. And at level 4, that's a beautiful necklace to wear for a lot of characters.
It's certainly a fancy option. The other thing to mention here is because of the War Priest tree for Favored Souls and Clerics, Blur is considered a Cleric and Favored Soul spell for purposes of wands. So if you find wands, you can give them to a Cleric, and they can actually cast them without any chance of failure because it's actually part of their spell list now. They can't memorize them unless they have the correct enhancement from War Priest, but it's something to be aware of.
Well, that's a nice tip. I did not know that. Learned something today already.
Yeah. So the next one that's very related to concealment, works in a similar way, is incorporeality. It's going to be a mischance. It's a different channel. It works in the same way as concealment in that it will overlap but not stack. Incorporeality is reflective of how ghostly you are. So you notice ghosts kind of phase in and out, and you have a % chance to miss them unless you have a ghost touch weapon. It's the same thing applied to player characters. There's a lot of ways to kind of sneak this in. Monks, dark monks, well, sorry, it's not dark anymore. You can hit either light or dark. Monks have an ability, Ninja Spy, that gives them a 1 minute per casting of it. You can also find some items. One of my favorite items in the game right now is still the Epic Stalker Ring out of House Cannith Challenges that has it on that. There's some stuff in the Giant Hole that has that as well. So you can find.
Yeah, the Ring of Shadows is pretty nice because you get your concealment and your incorp in the same item.
Yep.
And then there's the armor, Whisper Chain out of the Evening Star. That's another nice set for that.
Another way to get that is if you're a Pale Master, Wraith Form will give that to you as well. So that's an option. I have seen on occasion a Pale Master who is tanking switch to Wraith Form from Lich Form on the assumption that the mischance is going to be more helpful to them than the extra Constitution and paltry DR that Lich Form gives you. And they're just doing damage to a boss. They don't really need the DC bonuses and stuff like that. Let's see. I think we'll talk about resist energy and protection next. And I think part of the reason why I want to put these in here is, they are defenses, but the ones that I personally tend to discount and ignore, particularly since, guild buff, the old legacy style guild buffs will still apply. The new guild buffs will add an extra 15, as well as some absorption to that, depending on your level. The newer version is based on your character level, whereas the old ones just give you 30, 10, 20, or 30, depending on which shrine you have. But resist energy can be really important. Just casting the spell on yourself, that's 30 damage per hit. against a fire dragon, we're probably talking about 30 damage, and epic elite we're like 30 damage out of 4 to 500. Not that big a thing that's going to really help you out. I mean, it might save you. But the other one you really notice it, particularly at lower levels, is monsters that have weapons that do a little bit of fire or a little bit of acid kind of damage. Burning blood. There's archers.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
Burning blood. That's still
archers all over the place have like 1 to 4d6 damage of an elemental on their arrows that'll get you. And since they're attacking at a much higher rate of speed than getting hit by fireballs, it's probably going to give you a lot more in the long run. Now, there's some really clever ways you can get resist energy. You don't just have to have the spell. You can use potions. You can buy potions. I think you get 10 resist out of the marketplace and 20 resist out of the 12. I think there's another place you can get 20 resist, actually. I want to say Evening Star, but I don't remember if that's true.
I know the 12 has some. I guess I haven't looked anywhere else because I always go to the 12 to get them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's another spot where you can get them. I don't remember where it was, but I remember seeing it. I want to say Evening Star, but I'm not sure if that's true. So you can get, even if you can't cast, you can find those. I find, as you find these potions, keep them. Don't just sell them. Toss them in your shared bank. If they're a lower version, you can toss them in your shared bank for a Lobby or some Twink Gear for a TR. As you get the higher level ones, what I've kind of taken to doing is for the 30 versions, I'll put 10 of each on a character, and I'll dump the rest into the shared bank every once in a while. And then when a character needs some, he just pulls them out of the shared bank. It is worth noting, though, that the potions do have a level requirement on them. So just kind of be aware of that.
It's like level 5 or 6 for the 20-point potions.
7, I believe.
Is it that high?
I think it is, yeah. I think you have to actually cast it. You can also find protection from energy potions. Those I tend to sell. I tend not to do, not to worry too much about those unless I'm doing something really special and happen to have them around. Or if I know that I'm going to go run SDK Part 3 on a lower than intended character, I might, if I have a potion somewhere, I might bring it along, but I tend not to seek them out.
If you got a decent UMD, you can pick up scrolls of protection from energy, and the ones that give you all the elements. So you got in the quest, you can pop that and give you some cushion as you get started.
Yep, that's a good way to do it too. And there's also I think it's Divine Crusader, right? That has or is it Unyielding Sentinel? That has a tier 1 ability on it, so it's really easy to twist. That will give you all the resistances, which is also an option.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Some other things we wanted to mention, and we'll kind of cruise through some of these a little quicker so we can get through to the Warlock news. I call them damage reduction bubbles. It's Radiant Aura which is an Artificer spell, which is really handy. A note on it, though, if you're going to carry the spell, my problem with it is I always save it and end up never using it because I'm saving it for that moment that I really need it, and then I completely keep forgetting about it and never use it. So if you have it, use it. You can also cast on other people, which is helpful for tanking situations. In those situations, I tend to pretty much just, if there's someone that's really, really going to town on a tank and needs a little extra help, I'll just, every time it's off timer, I'll nail him with it if I can, depending on spell points. But there's some other ways of getting that bubble. The dwarves have that as an enhancement in their racial tree. In Eldritch Knight, there's a 3rd tier ability that it's an on-hit proc, so when you get hit, it has a chance to go off, which is great. You can also, if you have some festival cookies, one of the rarer cookies has that on its ability as well. And lastly, if you're a monk, if you're an Earth Stance, and if you have the Villager set out of Evening Star, you can also get that as an on-hit proc as well, which is the only reason why my Druid is not a complete set of roadkill. It's his saving grace right now, sadly. You had a couple things that you wanted to also mention.
Let's see. If you got any monk levels, deflect arrow feet. That I've used that a couple times, and I've been pleasantly surprised with how many arrows that knocks aside, especially in some of the Evening Star quests. There are a lot of people shooting at you.
I don't think you
Um,
have to be a monk. I think it's a feat you can actually take. It's
I
just
th
it's a bonus feat for monks. I know it's in I think it's in Vanguard. There's
there's
a
one in Vanguard, and I think the Ranger
Tempest. I
Tempest
think
tree's
Tempest
got
has one
some in
too.
as well. But I picked it up, and I was pleasantly surprised with how often that works.
Were
If
you
you can
actually
find
able to
some,
tell? Because I can never
yeah, you
tell.
see it. We see the deflect going across the screen.
Do you? I
I'm
didn't
like,
notice
oh. You can get the shield clickies. There are a lot of mobs that cast magic missile, and at higher levels, that still stings a little bit. So shield clicky helps out with
Or
that.
Night Shield does the same thing.
Night shield, yeah.
Although the
Otherwise, I
nice
think
thing
we
about
got.
shields is if you don't normally carry a shield, it gives a little boost to your AC.
Yeah,
Neat.
that's I mentioned earlier, but I'm a fan of every character having a shield outside of a monk, probably
Actually,
somewhere in the inventory.
while we're on that note, the white dragon armor, the epic white dragon armor, has a shield bonus on it. Uh, so it's kind of it's not a hidden ability, but it's one that people don't tend to think about. So if you want that shield bonus, I think it's like 6 or 8, depending on if it's upgraded or not. So it's not a lot. But if you don't normally carry a shield, it's a little bit extra AC if you want it.
Yep. I think everything else we got mixed in already.
Awesome. So if you have tips for improving your defense, feel free to leave them in the comments below. We always like people chiming in on that kind of stuff, and we might read your comment on the show if it's particularly helpful. We're going to talk about game news, and we're going to try and cruise through the boring stuff and spend a little time on the Warlock stuff. There is downtime tomorrow, Monday, 3 a.m. to noon Eastern time. I don't know. Maybe it's the pessimist in me, but I pity the poor maintenance guys that have to come in at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Oh,
Realistically, they're probably there at like 2 in the morning.
yeah, I was gonna say they're there before 3 a.m., but they probably don't have to fight traffic, so there's an advantage there.
Yeah, there is. I'd prefer sleep a little bit, or at that point, I don't even know if you bother going to sleep. You probably
Heck, they may be started
swing.
now
Yeah,
already. We don't even know.
yeah. They're probably sleeping now and getting ready to go in. The reason for the extended downtime is there's some significant back end work, so they're trying to give themselves more time. That's a 9-hour chunk. Not only are you starting at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, but you're probably working a 10 to 12 hour day. Oof. Hang in there, guys. Jerry, if you're listening to this, make sure you bring us some good donuts and a lot of coffee. I'm gonna need it.
Nice combo.
Yeah, good luck, guys. Thanks for sacrificing your sleep for our personal enjoyment. Let's see. What was going on with Warlocks? I'll start tracking Warlock stuff. Boring stuff out of the way. Warlocks. They have been talking a lot with the Players Council. That's why they were kind of quiet. But now we have a lot of news, so I'm going to kind of skip most of that. There will be a producer's letter coming out probably Monday or Tuesday. Word on the street is it has some stuff to do more, not just about Warlocks, but some technical stuff. I don't know what that means. It sounds kind of interesting. I'm sort of curious what they're going to be doing. It might be the technical stuff related to Warlock. I'm not sure, but it sounds kind of interesting. See, there's also as we start talking about Warlocks, the following was posted. They currently don't plan to restrict the use of reincarnation for Warlocks, whether players want to change an existing character to full Warlock or to try a multi-class with Warlock. They discussed the option of basically limiting the class for a period of time, which they have done in the past. But they felt that players should be able to play the game the way they want. So if you're worried about not being able to jump right into Warlocks, particularly since plus 20 Hearts of Wood are on sale this weekend, they're not planning any restrictions on that. Have fun. Play the game you want to play and enjoy Warlock. Cool.
I remember when Artificers came out, there was quite a bit of discussion on how to unlock the race and what it took to get there. So I'm glad they're making this much more transparent.
That one you didn't have to unlock it. You could buy it.
Yeah.
And they haven't said anything to this. My assumption is that Warlock will not be a free class. I don't know if it will even be free to VIPs. both Favored Soul and Artificer were not free to VIPs. You can earn them in game, but so they haven't really said anything on that regards. So we'll find out. Maybe it'll be maybe you'll unlock it with like 50,000 remnants or something like that.
That's a good point. I bet that gets brought up in the forums pretty quick once people start.
I probably shouldn't have given them the idea. I'm sorry, folks. All right, so let's talk about the Warlocks. There was a big posts, several posts actually, about Warlocks and some follow-up posts on that as well. So here we go. We're going to go through kind of groupings of features, and then we'll kind of talk about it briefly, and then we'll move on because we're already in an hour. So here we go. Happy to introduce Warlocks. They're coming soon to DDO. The Eldritch Casters with packs, powerful beings, deal large amounts of damage with their Eldritch Blast, and back that damage up with a variety of buff, control, and utility abilities. Warlock design draws from a variety of pen and paper editions, but primarily 3.5 and 5th edition, which means I have almost nothing to say, because the only thing I've used Warlocks in was 4th edition, and I didn't really like 4th edition. Unlike sorcerers or wizards, damage comes primarily through Eldritch Blast rather than frequently casting damaging spells or SLAs. They choose a pact at level 1 through a feat which alters their Eldritch Blast and determines certain class feats that are granted as more levels are gained. Reminder that this is a fairly early preview and things are very subject to change. Abilities may move between feats and enhancements or alter to accommodate what's changed elsewhere. So, class features. There'll be D6 hit dice. They can cast spells in light armor without arcane spell failure, like bards. They have strong will saves and weak fortitude and reflex saves, which I believe would be the same as wizards and sorcerers. 3/4 base attack bonus progression with class levels. So there'll be plus 15 at the higher levels, which I want to say is actually better than sorcerers and wizards.
I think so.
I think wizards only get up to 10, but I'm not positive on that. They'll be proficient with light armor and simple weapons. They will also be any alignment, and we'll talk about that later. That's pretty basic. We don't need to stop there. General structure of spell progression and spell points is similar to bards. Will be level 6 is the maximum spell level for warlocks. Spells are learned, known, and swapped like bards or sorcerers. The spell list is primarily drawn from existing spells, but they do hope to have some time to add some more. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Eldritch Blast is a toggle feat. When you toggle it, your basic attack, regardless of weapons held, becomes a ranged magical attack that hits a single enemy, initially doing 1d6 force damage. There are ways to augment and alter that. It does not cost spell points. It does not cost hit points or anything other than time, much like swinging a weapon. The default blast goes in a straight line. It does not home in, so enemies that move may avoid it. You do move at full speed while casting it, and unlike most spellcasting, the base damage increases with further warlock levels per a table, which we'll kind of cruise through. Eldritch Blast damage scales with the percentage of spell power. The exact amount has not yet been determined, mostly because they have to do balancing checks and stuff on Lomania, and will probably be the most subject to change out of anything. Also, criticals are based on magical stats and critical spell chance and critical spell damage. See, there are differing shapes, which we'll kind of talk about with enhancement trees. So the shapes that are available will be single target, which is going to be the base. There'll be a chain version, a cone version, and a point-blank AoE, which is essentially an aura, which will be really special.
Does it say it works on ranged or melee weapons?
It says any weapon. So basically, it takes the place of the weapon attack. So whatever you're holding, and this I've said in other places, so whatever weapon you have, the spell stuff on it will apply, but if it does 2d6 acid damage when it hits something, you're not going to get that as part of it. So let's see. We'll keep going for a little bit. You choose a pact at Warlock level 1. The choices are Fiend, Fey, or Great Old One. For Fey, you have a toggle that it gives your Eldritch Blast 1d4 sonic damage per 2 Warlock levels, and gives you so each of these you get 1d4 extra damage, either sonic, fire, or acid, depending on Fey, Fiend, or Great Old One. You also get a selection of spells, which we'll go over later. Every even warlock class level grants +1 die for Eldritch Blast pact damage, which is 1d4. And they'll get additional spells, which I mentioned. And then, let's see, I'm going to read through the enhancement trees, and then we'll kind of discuss what we've gone over so far. So enhancement trees, these are not the full trees, it's just kind of like where they're going with it. Soul Eater, your pact makes you an extension of your patron's hunger. Your body and mind become more inhuman, and your ability to consume the souls and life force of your enemies also feeds your patron. Your attacks erode the life essence of your targets. So noticeable enhancements. The Eldritch Blast shape will be Chain Lightning. It'll have damage over time effects, debuffs, and death effects. Tainted Secret. No secret is barred from the Tainted Scholar. No secret is barred from the Tainted Scholar's grasp. And if such forbidden knowledge comes at the cost of his soul, he's willing to pay that price. Their shape is Cone. Eldritch Exorcises that alter how Eldritch Blast works, including changing what kind of damage it does. There's direct damage boosting of Eldritch Blast and crowd controlling, including a new confusion ability that causes enemies to attack player and monster characters indiscriminately.
Nice.
I'll just stop there and say, that sounds fun. I'm concerned about lag, because that's probably going to change some things. Anytime you're messing with that much AI, that can be a little iffy. Enlightened Spirit. Although fiendish origins of some warlocks' powers can't be denied, not all warlocks embrace the darkness. Some turn towards the light. Such rare individuals are called enlightened spirits. It has so their blast shape is the point blank aura. When toggled on, this damage deals damage around, scaling with your Eldritch Blast damage. This particular shape allows you to attack with melee or ranged weapons while damaging enemies around you, which sounds kind of fun. Aura abilities that primarily buff allies around you. Some mitigation and pet summon and charm support. They expect this tree to be popular with cross-class melee builds. There was another post somewhere that they're not necessarily saying that people won't be able to just build melees that are pure warlocks. They're saying that they expect there to be a lot of multi-classing, particularly having interest in this tree.
Reminds me a little bit of Divine Disciple, where you pick the good or bad side, the later dark. Excuse me.
A little bit, although it's enhancement, so it's not as limiting. So there we go. So do you have any thoughts so far?
Well, it sounds kind of interesting. I was really early on when we were talking about the attacks that replaced the weapon type. I was thinking, Ranger Splash Mini Shot could be interesting. It does remind me a little bit of the Eldritch Knight, where you get your weapon effects added, or your extra damage attacks to your weapon. So I played 2nd edition AD&D, so I've actually never played with the Warlock, so this is all quite new to me.
Definitely the Eldritch Blast sounds kind of interesting. It's a replacement of your weapon, right? You're not getting both unless you're using the aura, which isn't going to be, you're not going to be able to fire, it's just going to be around you. So it's really an interesting mechanic. I'm interested to see how it plays. I think that's going to be the really defining feature of the class, and why you might want to go this direction. And it sounds like I like that the packs seem to give a lot of differentiation. So there's a lot of fun build options there. The enhancement trees all sound like they have really nice choices. So it seems to me like on the surface that the balance within the class is pretty solid between which pact you want to get and which enhancement trees you want to go for. So it sounds like there'll be a lot of fun, different things going on.
It's nice to see 3 enhancement trees right off the bat. We still have other classes that only have 2, so that's nice to see.
Yep, indeed. So if you want to look at the chart, we'll give you the link for this whole post and thread, and you can go look at it. But just kind of some of the stuff out of the level progression. They do have it's called Deceive Item, which gives you +5 to UMD. I'm not entirely sure how much that's going to apply, if it's going to apply to scrolls or whatever. But I think they get that 2 or 3 times, which, yeehaw for UMD. They also have an ability that gives them +5 MRR a few times. Some of the pact things that come up, so each pact will give you bonuses to one of the 3 saves, Reflex, Fortitude, or Will. There's also kind of a special thing around level 6, where one, Fae gives a kind of a dazing effect. The Fiend 1 gives you +2 to saving throws, and Great Old One gives you +5 MRR and 25% fortification. So there's some fun stuff going on there. You can also, with Fae, get an Abundant Step. Fiends will get a single target. I'm assuming this is everything is nothing. It says EIN at level 15, so that's pretty slick.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if they're going to make another Epic Destiny based on this sometime down the line. I didn't see it called out,
sound
but
like it. Actually, so the next section is on skills, paths, and Epic Destinies. For skills, they get 2 skill points per level, plus the normal intelligence bonuses. Class skills include Bluff, Concentration, Intimidate, Jump, Spellcraft, and UMD, so not a lot. But I believe that means they become only the 3rd class to have UMD as a class skill, with Rogues and Bards.
Artificers. So
Artificers do? Okay, yeah, that's right. Warlocks will have 1 path available, likely based on the Fiend Pact, but they welcome some ideas on that. Epic Destinies, maybe. There's a lot of debate on this, but initially they said Primal, so Warlocks will unlock the Primal Destiny initially. That may change. There's some other points in here as well. For spellcasting, they are planning on Warlocks having spell points. They will have very few spell slots and won't have a full suite of damage spells. Instead, they plan for the spellbook to lack damage spells entirely, with the possible exceptions of sort of damage spells. They've explored that many options and discussed this at length with the Players' Council, and feel that supporting spell points in Warlock is the best method for DDO, because it uses spell points instead of some custom resource, allows them to multi-class far better with other classes, as well as make better uses of Epic Destinies, which I think is a good way to go. They also feel that a small spell point pool and lack of damage spells, including lack of damaging spell-like abilities and enhancement trees, is the best method for making Warlock gameplay feel distinctly different from existing classes and playstyles, yet still be able to integrate with other classes. So that's kind of the direction they're going with that. So you'll have 6 spell levels. You get 2 spells per level plus your pack spell. So you're only going to have 3 spells that you can cast at each level. Not a lot. And you only get 50 spell points at level 1 and 25 spell points additionally every level. So you're not going to have a lot of spell points either.
Yeah, buff and go, it seems like.
Yeah. Just kind of some highlights out of... So each of the different packs gets a bonus spell list, essentially. Fiend gets, for some examples, Fire Shield. Fiend also gets Binding Chain, which many people have speculated, and it's more or less been confirmed without actually saying, yes, that's exactly what it is the kind of chain effect that like Sulamani's does, which would be kind of fun.
It's kind of fun, yeah. It'd be a nice change of pace to return the favor to some mobs with that.
Great Old Ones get Power Word Kill. Fae get Odds Irresistible Dance. So there's some fun stuff in there. Charisma will be the casting stat for all purposes. They also said that you can add some spells to your spellbook by taking Tainted Scholar cores, which will be discussed later. The spell lists, I'm not going to read everything out of them. You can go look if you want. It's mostly buffs and some utility-ish type spells.
Just glancing through the list, I see they got Dimension Door, Displacement, Solid Fog, Stone Skin.
They do have Dimension Door, but I'm going to note that you get 2 spells per level, and it's the same spell level as Haste and Displacement.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough choice.
So figure that one out. They couldn't put Dimension Door on level 4 and have... If it was level 4, it'd be a really easy choice, because level 4 doesn't really have a whole lot going for it. But so those are. I will mention they do have Hold Mass Monster, Wail of the Banshees in the spell list currently. So there you go. Let's see. Any thoughts so far?
It's interesting. I can see it being playing more of a support role, kind of like Battle Bard's my first impression of it. The basic buff seems nice, being able to do some damage. I didn't see anything about self-healing on there.
You were paying attention, sir.
Yeah.
There is not anything in that list. None of their spells have repair in them. None of the spells are healing spells. So they're gonna have to figure that one out. Not
So
that there
lead
aren't
them to
other
use the
classes that
night.
that's
Yeah.
true of. So
At least if they're looking at starting the primal sphere, you'll be closer to getting your cocoon versus working your all the way over from the arcane sphere.
yeah, it's a little debatable where that's gonna be still. So we'll see where that lands. I think my kind of take overall on it is, um, the spells are definitely going to be supporty in nature. Um, they do have some fun stuff in there. Like they do get Tensor's Transformation. They've got some death spells and some debuffs and stuff like that. So there's some fun stuff that they can certainly do. They're going to be really limited on what spells they can use because they're only going to have 2 per level plus their bonus spells. So the pact that you choose is going to be really impactful on your spell lists and what your spells can actually do. So there's some
Max
really
level is 6. That's going to hurt the DCs a little too. So being a DC caster is going to be really tough.
yeah. Although they have said that there's going to be a lot of DC stuff more so than wizards and sorcerers generally have in their enhancement trees. Kind of more like
That might
bards.
help offset it.
Yeah, bards spell singers can get pretty high DCs, so I'm not too concerned about DCs. But there's a lot of just at first glance, there's a lot of meaningful choices to have to make here. So it should be pretty fun.
I see occurrence of purple dragon knight splashes. Checking this out when they become available.
Actually, I was thinking Blade Forged might be a really solid choice as well, because you get the SLA reconstruct
Yep.
out of their tree, so that could be a really solid choice as well. Some other stuff. These are just kind of a selection of random responses to random questions about warlocks. There will be some pet support enhancements in Enlightened Spirit, but warlock isn't planning to get a major pet feature beyond that. Although they do have summoning spells. The rate of fire for Eldritch Splash isn't tied to melee or ranged alacrity, but rather its own statistics, which can be increased in some ways, such as enhancements. Right now, they're thinking that the base damage of Force can't be saved against from the blast. Pact damage will be saved against the same type of bonus that the Pact gives for half damage, so Reflex, Fortitude, or Will, depending on which one you are. There's a question about how well blast damage will scale in epic levels, which is one of the main reasons why they haven't really figured out how spell power is going to play. Eldritch Blast will be fired with your auto attack, basically left clicking for most players. There's no real cooldown except for what they're building into the animation. So in some ways, playing Warlock is more like playing an archer, except instead of arrows or bolts, you're hurling blasts. Blasts of Death, or Fire, Acid, or Sonic. They're currently working on getting different visual looks, which would be fun.
Yes. I was looking through. I didn't see any mention of additional feats available to the class.
Nope.
So you're going to be tight on the feats.
There's more on that later. Base attack bonus tentatively won't factor in Eldritch Blast attack speed, unlike normal melee and range attacks. Regarding the Primal Epic Destiny, this was Vargul's kind of comment. This is a bit controversial when they had a lot of discussions on it. They feel you could realistically argue for Warlock fitting in Arcane, Primal, and maybe even Divine. Their version of Warlock is trying to go for a more primal feel, separated from Wizards and their books, or Artificers and their crafts. It doesn't hurt that it also puts 4 classes into Primal rather than 5 into Arcane, which is a fair point. At the end of the day, they don't think it's going to be a make or break design decision since you can still get all the Destinies, but it's worth thinking about. Let's see. Someone asked a bunch of questions. Will the Eldritch Blast require a hit roll? No. Can it miss because of concealment or incorporeality? No. Are they subject to spell resistance? No. Yeehaw. Let's see. Regarding some feats, tentatively they're going to ignore ranged combat feats and benefits from some magic. It will probably benefit from some magic feats. Probably not Quicken, but Empower and Maximize makes sense, possibly Enlarge. This is a little bit off topic, but regarding charms, they may examine the 9 to 16 second trigger in Epic Hardened Elite that can dispel charms. He thinks it's 9 to 16 off the top of his head. He looked it up recently. He knows it's not just 2 to 3 seconds, which some posts seem to imply. Changes to pack damage, especially saves, are still in discussions and testing. Tentatively, force damage can be converted into Bane with a Tier 3 enhancement in Tainted Scholar. They don't expect you to just be auto-attacking, but you could. Let's see.
Now, if you read any of the Shinar books, but this kind of reminds me how the Druid would play in those books. He was just basically waving his arms and magic effects are happening and stuff was dying.
No, I haven't read anything like that.
Okay.
So there's a question about what's it mean that is this a spell? What does that mean? And the tentative answer is yes, it counts as a spell. With the following exception, we are expecting to allow you to Eldritch Blast while Barbarian Raged. If someone can prove to us that's a broken build on Lemania, we'll rethink that stance. So have at that one.
If you look at, there's the Druid spell where you get the Flame Swords. This all seems to be a whole expansion in that little part of the game that was opened up with that spell.
Maybe a little bit. Tentatively, the blast spell level will scale with your warlock ability, but if they can't get that tech to work, they'll probably just raise the level to avoid any gotchas, particularly with globes of invulnerability. They'd rather have a level 5 or even 9 Eldritch Blast level 1, even with the DC implication that has, rather than be blocked by globes of invulnerability. No complaints there. The best level 20 benefits are expected to come from enhancement tree capstones, not that the base class gets nothing at 20. Eldritch Blast will be subject to Arcane Spell Failure, but not in light armor. No sneak attacks on Eldritch Blast, sorry. The AoE aura is the only one that will let you apply melee or range damage at the same time. That said, Soul Eater has some additional support for warlocks that aren't Eldritch Blasting all the time, but those characters may well want to dip into Enlightened Spirit to gain the aura as well. I expect everyone will probably dip into the aura if it's got some low-hanging fruit. Let's see. There'll be more DC boosting in the trees than most casters get, conceptually like Spellsinger, but maybe not that exact implementation. Current thoughts include some healing for Enlightened Spirit and some forms of temporary hit points in other trees. They have to see how things play out in practice. Warlocks will probably get magical training feats.
How long before we see mob warlocks in the games to fight against?
I don't know. Probably we'll get some warlocks to fight against. I would assume so. And it would make sense since we're going to be in Shavrath. Just saying.
It's like there's a big clan or something out there.
Some tieflings, maybe? I'm guessing. Let's see. Regarding switching blasting shapes, they don't expect it to be a very long-term thing. They don't want switching from cone to single target to be onerous. And their current thinking is that Eldritch Blast will be evocation and gain appropriate boost for that, otherwise act like an evocation spell. They're still looking to tech for spell levels. So, we'll pause here. Anything you want to throw out there for thoughts on this?
Yeah, I kind of nickel-dimed him here as we were talking. It looks quite interesting. Something always new is going to be fun to play with for a while. And I definitely am going to make a little effort to get on Lemania just to get my feet wet on it, provide a little feedback.
It seems like a lot of the questions are really relating to Eldritch Blast, which admittedly is unlike anything we've had in the game. So it should be... I would say I'm definitely more excited about Warlocks now than I was before, which I think is good and kind of part of the idea here. Certainly there are some things here that are going to... They got to figure out, balancing things, they're still trying to figure out what they can and can't do with some of the stuff with Eldritch Blast. But it certainly sounds interesting and exciting, and it sounds like a lot of fun. And it sounds different.
I hope if they got to make a decision on power level, I'd rather have them bring it in a little weak and then turn it up as the game plays out versus coming in strong and then turning them down. Because I'd much rather get a little extra than have something taken away.
It sounds like most of the tweaking is going to be in the spell power, spell critical area. How much of that applies? It may not be a straight bonus. All right, there's some other things that were kind of debate. One of them was alignment. So the response to many of these was they understand that some of the lore-based frustrations that Fey-based warlocks don't have alignment restrictions. That said, they're not even slightly swayed by alignment restriction arguments based on, quote, power, which have been proposed several times in the thread and others. They don't really see why lawful good warlocks are going to be overpowered in ways that lawful good sorcerers are not already overpowered as one extreme example. If someone wants to make a case for why they should pre-nerf warlocks based on alignment, please be very thorough, and I suggest using sorcerers as a comparison. You'll have to convince both yourself and us either one, warlocks are obviously different from sorcerers in some way that matters for alignment, or that two, sorcerers need to be nerfed and shouldn't be allowed to be lawful good. I'm going to say go for the former rather than the latter, please. Thank you. As noted in the original post, they plan to disallow good for fiendish packs, although there are some tech issues they may need to solve before that can be implemented. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on alignment?
No, looking at some of the abilities, they seem to be a little shady where I could see why good was questioned, but you look at some of the cleric and rogue abilities as well and wonder how it's still good, so I don't see this out of line with any of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to really compare them. I get why he's comparing them to sorcerers, and it's a good baseline for sure. And I would say as people were kind of saying, well, this means we'll have paladin warlocks. I'm like, yeah, well, at first I was like, well, I'm not sure we really want that. But I think Vargil makes a good point that, like, why is this different than what sorcerers can do? Because sorcerers can be lawful good, so.
And if you look at the Sorc to the Paladin, I think they're more extremes between squishy and tough. While the Warlock gets a little more hit points, can wear a little decent armor, it seems to fall a little more in that middle ground.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see.
I don't see it overpowering. I don't, just what I've seen here.
Yeah, we'll see what, and a lot is going to come down to enhancements too, right? Like if pure warlock is the way that a lot of people want to go, anyways, alignment doesn't really matter because really the main feature of alignment and application of alignment in DDO is preventing you from multi-classing in certain builds. That's the primary thing that it's doing. So it's really kind of got to be a multi-class argument. Why should it matter from a multi-classing standpoint? And some that's going to be based on enhancements and capstones. So.
Well, there's several splash builds I like that use 8 cleric or 8 bard. So I'm already thinking, geez, with 8 warlock, you could do fighter, you could do paladin, you could do ranger. You could have quite a variety of different mixes of abilities mixed in there. So
yeah,
time will tell.
Feat choices and some little bit of design theory on it. Vargil encourages anyone suggesting that warlocks not be able to use any meta magics. Think about what that means for larger class design. My sorcerer wouldn't know what to do with all his feat slots if meta magics were not an option, and saving throws didn't matter. They may also make some more general selectable feats for customizing warlock. Epic feats are more likely than heroic ones. But what feats are warlocks expected to take if not some meta magics? Similarly, there's one of the reasons they're likely to make Elder Splash getting boosted by evocation-related feats. It lets you build your warlock differently from other warlocks, which is good design in theory. Let's see. So there's some suggestions that for no metamatics or no saving throws at all, he can see how that makes warlocks might be more powerful or simpler without having those drawbacks. But it's less interesting from a design standpoint if every warlock could deal full maximum damage at all the time at every level without any build decisions or requirements to reach that maximum power, and that's not what DDO is about. So, if you have thoughts on that, try and frame it with some of that stuff in mind, and some early thoughts based on feedback. I'm not promising anything. But some stuff that he's kind of noted over the weekend. They'll probably strongly consider not tying Warlock to the primal sphere of epic destinies. Metamatics will surely be a topic of discussion. Desirable feats for Warlock is a likely topic of discussion as well, but more broadly. Adding choice and diversity is a major goal. At the same time, they want to make sure caster Warlocks aren't just scrambling for any useful feat to find. He does think that there are serious discussions for wizards and sorcerers about whether or not maximize and empower are both entirely necessary, and some of those characters might be best without them. See, they do, of course, want to add new spells to the game, including for Warlock's release. He's a bit surprised how often players have suggested that death spells aren't appropriate. So if you have a feeling of whether or not they should be in Warlock or not, let him know. Spell points are probably here to stay in some form, but they're aware that having some spell point free abilities is important. And they'll probably still be discussing alignment restrictions. Disclaimer, on all of this stuff, things can and probably will change, because that's how it works. Any closing thoughts on Warlock before we move on?
No, looking interesting. Looking forward to testing them on Lamania.
Yeah, it all looks pretty good. So looking forward to it. A quick bug to mention. I don't know what armor it was, but there was a picture of PDK armor, or Purple Dragon Knight with a certain set of armor that had no pants. So it was just this shorts. That was pretty funny. Bonus days, Champion Hunter Week. Mysterious Cloaks, Bracers, and new augments are at the Mysterious Remnants vendor through May 21st. The new augments are exceptional and insightful stats, +1 and +2. Store news, you can get a +20 Heart of Wood through today. And if you buy a +20 Heart of Wood, you can get a free +5 Heart of Wood with the code WOOD5. And you can use it as many times as you want. Sales for the week, 20% off of Monster Manuals, Slayer Count Boost, Creature Companions, Accessories, and Name Changes. You can also get a stack of 50 Omnispell Dust with the code OMNI15, OMNI15, once per account. 142nd Chronicle, Jaggy is back with a new crafting project. Grandpa Tadagan's Funny Bone and Classical Screenshots has funny DDO images and more, so you can check that out. The High Lords of Malkir did a Tower of Despair teaching raid yesterday. Makar DDO's 10-week challenge continues. Week 3 was the Pit and or Temple of Elemental Evil. The lowest level you could do it was level 4. You only had to do one of them on level 4, and then just complete the other one no higher than level 7 to get the full points. Just because, for fun, I did them both at level 4, and let me tell you, Temple of Elemental Evil solo on level 4 on Elite is really hard.
Ouch.
That was a chore, and I used a liberal amount of cookies. If for some strange reason you actually want to watch the 2-hour video of me doing that, it is on YouTube. You can do that. I recommend kind of paging it through. There's no time rush. There's no really anything helpful to actually do that. But feel free to kind of bounce around and see how I managed to actually complete that, only dying twice, which was the maximum allowable deaths. After that second one, I was getting a little nervous. My palms were getting a little sweaty because I wanted to win, and I didn't want to start all the way over because it was 2 hours at that point.
So, yeah, you get invested at that time.
Yeah, it was tricky, and thankfully I had a lot of luck involved because I only ran into one patch of traps. It was very much towards the end, and probably the last possible place there could be traps. And they killed me outright and got me by surprise, I will say. But luckily I managed to get through the whole thing. You can also watch I'm putting all the challenge videos of me doing the challenge on YouTube, so if you want to watch any of them, if you want an idea how to do some of them, or if you want to watch someone do the pit, there's none of them are guided tours or anything. I'm just playing, but you can watch it for folks that are interested. And the current challenge through next week Sunday is to do Cobalt Chaos on a level 7 character with level 14 challenge. So I'll be doing that this week at some point. The Guild of the Week. Guild of the Guildless is a Cannith-based guild made up of solo players looking to keep their current playstyle but have access to an airship and guild storage. You can send a request to Irving the Chaotic in-game. The comment for the week. If your favorite character could carve out a kingdom for themselves, where would it be located? Where would it be located, Propane?
Somewhere nice and warm. The Hawaiian Islands come to mind this time of year.
Since my character here would be one of my Warforged, probably my Warforged Barbarian, because that's usually what I consider for most of these things. I'm gonna say Silicon Valley for some.
Nice.
I'm going to Silicon Valley for some upgrades. The fan site news: DDO Players News is giving away 5,000 turbine points. Yeah. So you can go comment and win that. We debated raid bosses, grouping, and more stuff last week. Dido Gamer probes a lamp with a 10-foot pole in an episode. The Dirty Kobold had their third episode looking at adventure packs. Enrique looked at a busy weekend of questing in a blog post. And Even Note looked at a character that she hates to love. And Saba Jade completed her first Mark of Death. Congratulations, and word about that as well. Let's see, what else we got in here? You can check out new playlists on the YouTube page. Jerry went through and cleaned that up, so you can watch. You can subscribe to the various live streams if you'd like. You can check that out as well. Let's see, anything else fun going on? Let's see, there was also a community update video on Friday. Lessa posted a video of the Sitting Ducks running Caught in the Web. Sitting Ducks is a permadeath group with Sublime Permadeath Guild. So you can watch that if you would like. And Axel had a commentary on his YouTube channel about hirelings and raids, which has been a topic of discussion of late. Dido Gamer talked about making your own splash screen. So if you are tired of looking at all those screens when as you zone different places, you can make your own, apparently, which I didn't know.
Interesting. I did not know that either.
Yeah, he got pretty sneaky about it. He went into the files, basically, and replaced them. And it's something, if you do, he didn't suggest this specifically, but those files get overwritten occasionally. So if you do that, copy them in another folder so you can just drag and drop. Pro tip. Dido Players News had their 32nd episode, a Baby Brass Dragon Meat Shield. What's the name of that?
Dido, those guys are fun to listen to.
Yeah, they are. I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all, but they're a little wet behind the ears, and it's great.
Oh yeah, it's good hearing the viewpoint of new players to the game, just discovering stuff, and it's fun to listen to. Just that different perspective is great.
I talk about doing stuff for the first time that I did for the first time like eons ago, and it's fun to remember back to the day where that was true. DDOCast News, Makar DDO's challenge, like I said, is on YouTube if you want to look at some of that stuff, and our website DDOCast.com. They're there as well. DDOCast will probably have a show tomorrow. I got some stuff going on in my life that may affect that, but I'm hoping not. But we should be playing tomorrow. Also, this Saturday, May 23rd, we are going to do a special DDOCast Bonnie and Moosey from the Bonnie and Moosey show. I think I've got all the damsels of DDO coming in. Most of the DDOCast folks that I've been running with, possibly Propane and some other DDOcast folks as well. We're going to run VOD, Vision of Destruction, and possibly also Hound of Zoriat, depending on how things go, with out-of-the-box iconic characters. We're going to roll iconic characters, and we're going to take them straight in. And it's probably going to be messy and a lot of fun. I have no idea how well it's going to go. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Hey, you thinking elite or normal?
I'm kind of thinking normal, since I think
I was just thinking, let's try it normal and see how it goes.
The quest is normally level 15, or sorry, level 18. We'll be level 15. We won't have DR breakers. We won't have scrolls. We won't have curse potions. I mean, they don't even give you plat when you roll an iconic character, so...
your daily dice roll, you have a chance to get a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe I'll let folks do that, but...
The first couple chests we get going in would be quite interesting.
We're only guaranteed one. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting to see. Also, if you want to support the show, I'm hoping to do some bigger prize stuff this summer. If you want to give some money, go to DDOcast.com and feed the kobolds, and we'll see what we can do on that. I like giving away prizes, and I'm kind of getting ready to do something a little bigger, I think, maybe. Definitely giving away a bigger prize. I'm trying to figure out what that's going to look like. Some posts. Alan mentioned from our last show, he liked the PvP idea in guild airships, but add on to it, how about a trapper gauntlet, maybe a healer one and a tank one, add some games like life-size chess and reversey game. Also, the two things he has trouble in DDO with is time spent waiting for your group and meeting other players. He'd very like an open area to meet people and help out, but that's not PvP. Peterson also mentioned that ninja spies gain Vorpal on short swords, combos, and shurikens with their last core ability. It's quite the trash mower, especially with the shuriken, which is a good point. Also from our chat, a question that Winter Sturm asked, is improved fortification feat still bad for healing? We're talking about improved defense. Is there still a use for it? I'm going to say adamantly no. Improved fortification is a feat that Warforged can take that makes them completely immune to divine healing. If you take it, you have to get repair damage. Positive healing does not affect you anymore. I think the only exception to that would maybe be Lay on Hands, but I've never tested that. It gives you 100% fortification in return. The reason why I say don't take this, I'm pretty adamant about not using it, is it's not hard to get 100% fortification.
Or 120 or 140%.
Especially on a Warforged. It is not hard at all. The first tier of their tree, and they have probably one of the best racial trees, I think gives you another 25%. So they start with and they already have a base 25% anyways. So you find 100% fortification item, you're already sitting at 150. Don't take it. It's, in my opinion, probably the worst feat in the entire game. Survey question. Mark on Kyber asks, from players that solo a lot, how do they manage the hard quests? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Patience and strategy. You learn to pull a mob or 2 or 3 here at the time. Don't bite off more than you can chew. And be prepared to repeat a quest a couple times as you learn it better and get into it. But you use a little strategy. Brute force doesn't work all the time, especially stuff gets harder.
Yeah, solo players generally have to account for things like how to pull, quest mechanics, first of all. How to pull 3 levers in the same spot can be kind of tricky. Definitely experience helps, being prepared. These solo characters are really good solo characters. They generally have some versatility in them. And like you said, strategy and patience. If you watch the Temple of Elemental Evil, I'm going to plug it again. If you watch any part of that, please don't watch the whole 2 hours of me just playing Tito. That's weird. I don't know. I can't imagine that's actually a good one. But you can get an idea of how I did it, which was a lot of patience and strategy. And my character had a little versatility. It was a 3 paladin, 1 ranger, so he had a little bit of extra range boost going for him. But it was a lot of sneaking, going around a corner, pulling 2 or 3 back around the corner and killing them, and kind of doing a lot that way. You learn some kind of tricks about how to do some soloing stuff, getting kind of mold it to your character. It's a lot of strategy. It's a lot of metagaming too, frankly. It's pretty hard to solo quests without knowing what you're getting into, because they generally take a lot of preparation, and maybe you know that because no one's there to save you if something goes wrong. So it's knowing that I'm going to need freedom of movement in this quest or in this part of the quest, or I'm going to need Death Ward here, because if you make a mistake, it could end up with your death and you're kind of hosed. So with that, Propane, do you have anything that you want to plug?
Nope. Zillomania's coming out with the War Chanter, with the Warlock soon. Try to get over there, provide feedback earlier than later is often better. Nothing else. Our guild's doing raid night tonight here in about 20 minutes, so
have fun.
Grab a quick bite to eat and then try some, do 2 or 3 raids tonight. Good way to wrap up the weekend.
Awesome. So thanks for listening to the show. Thanks to the folks in the chat. I hope that this was a slightly more enjoyable experience, and that whole video experiment worked in this mechanism. Thanks for Propane for being on the show, and thanks to the other contributors, DDOCast. Thanks to Turbine and Wizards as well for making the game. Really appreciate that. Also want to thank Cyberairs for hosting the podcast. Really appreciate them doing that for us. You can hit us up at DDOCast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you want to be part of the show or just say hi, email us at DDOCast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for latest cast updates. If you're going to follow us on one social media platform, follow us on Twitter, because that's the one place I put everything. Most of the DDO Splat stuff I don't put on Facebook or Google+. Closing tip for the week. Kirkos from Orion says, playing a monk, you can hotbar the generic finishing move feat, and when you have a finishing move charge, the image on that will change, and you can hit that and activate the finishing move. It's a great tip if you like playing monks. So with that, until next time, all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to chime in on the Warlock thread and give the devs your feedback. Thanks for listening.